ever quit or avoided doing something? Practicing your high school Spanish with a native speaker, auditioning for the role in a play, speaking in public, because you thought that you weren't good enough? Please raise your hand. What if I were to tell you that you probably aren't good enough? You're not strong enough, talented enough, skilled enough, brave enough, experienced enough. You're simply just probably not good enough. And that is okay, because no one is good enough until they are. I'd like to speak with you guys this evening about something that affects all of us in every aspect of our life, and that is believing in yourself. Starting with a story about my good friend Yevgeny Marchenko, who was training in an intense Master of Sport acrogymnastics training program in Riga, Russia, where he's from. He was required to take a high-level conditioning test that would determine whether he would pass or fail out of the program. Yevgeny loves acrogymnastics, a partnering gymnastics sport, as much as I do. So he spent months training his butt off for this test. He failed it. His coach told him, "You're not strong enough. But the thing is, I see something in your eyes. So go and try again." Yevgeny went back and he tried even harder. He came to the gym early and he left late. He took the test again. He failed it again. His coach told him, "The rules say you failed. You're not good enough. But the thing is, I still see it in your eyes. So I want to give you one last chance." Yevgeny went back and he poured every ounce of determination in his body into his training. And the third time around, when he took the test, and he passed it, there was no happier acrobat on the planet than he was. Yevgeny went on to become a 5-time world champion in my sport. He's a hero of mine. Eventually, after my father, Don Van Loo, helped him and his family move to America, he went on to coach Carly Patterson win the all-around Olympic gold medal in gymnastics. Yevgeny Marchenko was not good enough until he was. What I know for sure is that your dreams will make you prove yourself to them. If you are dreaming big enough, then your dream is not going to simply fall into your lap. You're going to feel not good enough. Even I, a 7-time national champion, have thought more times than I care to remember, who am I to think I can do this? I'm not good enough. You guys know that feeling, right? Everyone feels like that at times. You are not alone. I spent most of my life being not good enough on my way to kicking ass. Continuing on despite that feeling will be the measure of how badly you are willing to fight for your dreams. Years ago, at the tail end of being married to my first boyfriend, yes, I did that, I started working for an entertainment agency. And just between you guys and me, my job was embarrassing. I had to wear this hideous neon, psychedelic, full-body unitard, like a box of Skittles just vomited all over me, with a matching cone hat. I had to prance around on stage, a 7-time national champion, as background eye candy for this magnificent aerial acts. 5 years had passed since I'd retired from competition, and I was just a shadow of my former self. I had gained weight and lost muscle mass, and things weren't going very well with my relationship, so I wasn't feeling very confident about myself, especially not in the dumb unitard. But I would dance around on stage, and I would watch these aerial acts, and the heaviness in my heart would lift, and I would want so badly to be up there with them performing and flying. One day, the entertainment agency asked me if I would be willing to learn 3 basic aerial tricks for an upcoming show that they wanted to choreograph me, and I was like, yeah, of course. So I started driving every Thursday, 4 hours from Orlando to Miami, where I trained in a 110-degree warehouse with an old acrobatic teammate of mine named Michael McPherson, who had just quit Cirque du Soleil. The corde de lis, an aerial rope that hangs 32 feet from the ceiling to the floor. Nothing could be simpler. Nothing could be more absurd. Now, imagine doing acrobatics and contortion tricks and drops and rolls Now imagine doing that on a rope, and you can imagine how painful it might be. The cordelise, it shines a gigantic spotlight on your weaknesses. Little muscles you had no idea existed, little muscles in your fingers, and your forearm, and your spine. Muscles that no Gold's Fitness Gym has ever exercised, I can assure you. Start screaming for mercy. I started learning the cordelise by climbing one pull up the rope at a time, like a caterpillar or an inchworm. And the first time I managed to climb all the way to the top, high enough to touch the warehouse ceiling, I was so exhausted that I slid down the rope like a fireman's pole. I stepped off the rope, looked at my hands. I had torn all of the skin off my palms and fingers. Horrified, I thought, well, there goes the end of my aerial career before it ever even began. Only 2 minutes later, Michael says, "Up again." And I said, "You're kidding me, right? Did you not see my hands?" And he says, "Yes, I did. I'm sorry, Christine, but it's the only way to build up enough strength." So I bandaged my hands in toilet paper and duct tape, and I kept climbing. I climbed until my hands gnarled into claws, and my forearms felt larger than Popeye's. And that evening I stumbled into my hotel room, caked in dirt, sweat, bleeding from holes in my hands and feet, and I lay down, unable to move anything but my eyeballs. I was too tired to even cry. The only thing that had energy were my thoughts, and they berated me. "I cannot do this. This is way too hard. I'm too old. I'm not strong enough." If you can imagine doing pull-ups for 6 to 8 minutes straight, you'll get an inkling of what it's like to do an aerial act. Well, I doubted I had that in me. So I lay there for a long time feeling sorry for myself. Finally, I pulled myself up, and I looked myself square in the face in the mirror, and I asked myself, what do you want? What do you really want? And I heard this little voice in the back of my mind say, "I want to fly." Frankly, I didn't want to hear that little voice because I knew it was going to be really hard. And worse, it made me question whether the things in my life, including my home, my job, and the man in it, whether I really wanted those things. And that was really hard to look at. So at first I was like, enough is enough, we're going home. I started packing my suitcase saying, who really joins the circus anyway? This is just ridiculous. And then I stopped. Because I knew that no matter how ridiculous it may sound, the truth is, I wanted to fly. And I thought of something the writer Toni Morrison wrote, if you want to fly, you have to give up the shit that brings you down. So I knew that the first thing I had to give up about myself were my doubts. I had to be okay with being not good enough, yet. You know, sometimes the goals that we set for ourselves, whether they are recovering from a trauma or restarting our life after divorce, can seem so daunting when we look at them in their entirety, that we lose our energy to even begin claiming them. As a child in acrogymnastics, the whole idea of becoming a champion acrobat seemed as possible as touching a star in a distant galaxy. And if I would have focused on that as a whole, I would have quit way back in beginner level. But I learned to break down my goals into their simplest components and to focus only on believing in what was just right ahead of me. Most of us don't dream big enough. You know when you've dreamed big enough, when your dream seems impossible. But when you dream the impossible dream, it can become very easy to become overwhelmed at the magnitude of that dream and at the process of getting there. So I don't know how I'm going to reach this impossible dream of becoming a professional aerialist at this time in my life. I just keep driving to Miami every Thursday, and I focus on believing in my next pull up the rope. When my wounds reopen, I rebandage them, I ignore the pain, and I focus on believing in my next pull up the rope. And no, it's not easy. I feel pain climbing on shredded hands. Sometimes I'm scared. I definitely have doubts, lots of them. But I just have to make myself believe in taking that next step. I can do that. We can all do that. We can all believe in taking that next step. Well, guess what happens? As I continue to take one step after another, my hands heal over and grow a protective layer of callus. I start losing weight, start gaining muscles. Tricks that seemed like a nightmare during my first class become like second nature. And as I continue to take one step after another, I learn to believe in myself again. And by believing in myself, every single extraordinary experience since that moment becomes possible. Since that moment, I've become a professional aerialist who performs worldwide with live symphony orchestras. And for the King of Malaysia, and for the Royal Zulu Princess in Africa, and for Cirque du Soleil, 80 feet off a 9-story building from a hot air balloon, and at the Kennedy Center, and the Sydney Opera House, and Madison Square Garden, and the Olympics, and before 100,000 people for Paul McCartney. I've become a professional stunt woman. In fact, in the filming of Rush Hour 2, I repeated an aerial rope sequence 56 times in a row, so many times that Jackie Chan came up to me and said, "You're so late, you never complain." I've traveled to over 40 countries and I speak 4 languages. I'm a master instructor and co-owner of Airborne Arts, an aerial retreat center overlooking a 600-foot waterfall in Costa Rica, with Jonathan Conant, the love of my life, who I married in Paris. The single most important factor in my physical capability and my professional success as an elite athlete and as an aerialist and as a human being has never been supplements or nutrition or how much I trained. It has always been, do I believe in myself? Am I capable and worthy of my dreams? Am I good enough? The days I could muster a yes, strength would pour into my body where there was none among them before. But the second I let doubt infiltrate my mind, that strength would drain right out. Each and every one of you matters. But no amount of potential or hard work or pep talk will ever suffice if you don't believe that. I was really lucky because I had loving parents who told me that I mattered. That might not sound significant, but believing that you matter is the foundation for going into the world and experiencing it the way that you deserve to experience it. What was it that Yevgeny's coach saw in his eyes that convinced him that it didn't matter whether he was good enough yet? Of course, he had passion and determination, but most of all, he believed in himself. Despite evidence to the contrary that showed that he wasn't good enough, he believed in himself so much that he made his coach believe in him. We have to believe in ourselves. We have to be on our own side. Not just a little bit, not just as much as our coaches or our friends or our family, but to the absolute exclusion to all things, internal or external, that would dissuade us from believing in ourselves. You cannot possibly identify with feeling good enough because no one is good enough until the moment that they are. This is the natural route for achievement. Confusion always precedes enlightenment, darkness before the dawn. So just remember this. You don't have to believe that you can climb to the very top. You just have to believe with all of your heart that you can take the next step. Thank you.